Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Ray again from Ray Life Coaching. And today we are going over the Manifesting Magic Manual. And last month we went on the first part of the manual, which is Codependency No More. So, again, if you haven't been here, you may know that I do might check out my live chats, which one of them is this, the manifesting magic manual, which goes over how to the second step of my coming out process. Um, and the manifesting magic manual goes over the things that I learned as I was coming out as polyamorous. It's not specific to polyamory, but it is some of the lessons learned along the way of what I needed to embody in order to feel good and trust the decisions that I was making. Whether it is hurting people around you, you feel guilty. Maybe you're used to saying yes when you really know it doesn't fit you. That's what this is all about. So the first process is the first step of the coming out process. There's 4 steps. The first step you will see in another live chat on Facebook. It's called um, Don't Shut Up, Just Stand Up. And it's the confidence toolkit. So you can check that out on my events page on Ray Life Coaching. But this one is manifesting magic, and it's about feeling really good in your skin, stepping into your own power so that you can start actually building the life that you want to live, really. And but if you don't know what that looks like, what who you really are, if you can't differentiate yourself from everything around you, then it's going to be very difficult. And so the first step in it, which you will see in the previous video that I did last month, was Codependency No More. And this is actually still part of Codependency No More. This video today, it's the last part about understanding your attachment and how that plays a role in your making decisions and understanding your codependent or your possible codependency or your link to others. And I use codependency leniently because really it's not in like the worst case scenario. It's more in a way of realizing how we depend on others, maybe to a default in a way that might actually be hurting us and others. And we want to get a little closer to the center. And so we're going to talk about attachment and how that also looks very similar. It'll be interesting to kind of go over that with you. So, as I'm talking about attachment theory, please think about yourself, your habits, and not only your habits, but how other people relate to you and what you're seeing around you, because that will also determine maybe where you are on the spectrum of attachment and security in your life. Okay, so we're gonna open open my screen here to share with you. So let's try to do that. Okay, so as you can see that we have get it up. We have my manifesting magic manual up already to where I want to talk about, but I'm going to show you how to get to the manifesting magic manual on your own. It's free on my website. You just go to Ray Life Coaching and you just go to or Renee Bior, which is my full name.com. And that's the speaker. And you would go there. You're going to go to more and go to free resources. And then you'll notice that there's 3 different pamphlets that you can get online. They all coalesce onto one page on my website. So when you download any one of these, you'll get an email that will link you to my page and a code for you to get in so that you can get whichever one you want. So press whichever one you want is fine. If you press like the confidence toolkit and you really want the manifesting magic manual, just a warning that you're also kind of telling me which one you most need right now. So you may get, as time goes on, emails or information more in that particular arena. So choose the one that makes more sense for you. And so you would download, and then you would get an email, and you would get a link that would then bring you to the free stuff page. And that all has all of it. Like I said, it has, oops. It has the first part of the coming out process, which is the coming out confidently, the confidence toolkit. And then it also has what we're going to talk about partially today, which is the manifesting magic manual. And if you don't already know, I'm going to be doing monthly chats on each part of each of either the toolkit or the manifesting magic manual. Just check out my events page for when that is. Okay, so here we're going. So if you download, you will get to what we saw before, which is this manual. And we're just going to go to page 16. And I'm going to take you there. Okay, so we're going to describe attachment styles. And John Bowlby developed, I might be pronouncing his name wrong because I have a little dyslexia around names, developed attachment theory, which explores infants' behavior when separated from their caregivers. The book Attach, published by Dr. Amir, it's right here actually, Levine and Rachel Heller, gained attention for its insights on the subject. So an anxious, and this is also just a quote, an anxious attachment style is one that is commonly coined as codependent. So now you can see the link between codependency and attachment theory, in that sometimes certain behaviors are linked to that attachment style that you may have either as a default. Some of us may feel like we have a default attachment style based on what we tend to come with automatically on a larger percentage of time. Or I personally find that I am very different mattering upon the person and scenario and circumstance that I'm in. But yes, there tends to be a regular thing that I find that is my lesson right now. And that tends to be the attachment style that comes with it. So here's a brief overview of how attachment styles can impact your overall level of dependence on others. And so that's why it's connected to our codependency no more. And again, check out the previous video from last month. You just go to my Ray Life Coaching, and I think it's just /live for the videos, all that have been recorded. Okay, so attachment styles. There's secure, and that's where we feel really good about ourselves. And that's where we want to start to learn how to be more, or how to move ourselves. There might be some tricks that we can kind of move ourselves closer to being secure, feeling secure. 2 is preoccupied or anxious. And so the preoccupied versus anxious, it really matters upon if you're a child or an adult. And so we use these words kind of interchangeably because they describe a child in their circumstance one way, and then an adult as they get older and don't have a parent or a guardian, influencing, then they may still have those qualities, but it may be named something different. So preoccupied and anxious, and 2, dismissive or avoidant, and 4, fearful and disorganized. We're going to go over to page 17. And these little visuals may help in that. I'm just gonna get them kind of bigger, so you can kind of see how you're reacting to a situation that might not feel all that good when someone kind of leaves your environment and you want them to be present. Secure, self-assured, direct, and responsive. So they're looking toward the door. It's usually about a parent leaving. This is one of the studies that happened in finding out how children react to their parent being, unavailable to their cries and needs and bids for attention. So secure, self-assured. It's like, okay, I'm here, I'm good, but I'm still going to tell you what I want. So they're looking through the door's open, and they're just waiting. So that's a little visual of how that may look. They're responsive, they're ready, they're direct in communicating their needs and wants. Dismissive is kind of like the door's closed, they're self-reliant, like they're like turned away from the door. They're like, nah, I can do this by myself. They're avoidant and distant. And so if the parent comes in or the person that they're waiting for comes in, they may not actually turn toward them again. Um, and then preoccupied or self-doubting, anxious, and sensitive. So that's let me go back up so you can see. It's kind of worded slightly different in that one. Preoccupied, anxious, that's number 2. And okay, so the door's completely open. They're running through the door. They're trying to run after the parent or the person that they want attention from. And they're not willing to wait. It's actually very scary for them. They want to run toward if the person's left. So self-doubting, feeling like they can't do it on their own. They're very anxious. They're very sensitive to the movements of others. Fearful, this is like the extreme, right? Where they're like, they've gotten boundaries down to a place that's actually not good. You know what I mean? Like, boundaries are good, but sometimes there's excessive boundaries. There's like a lot of rules, there's like a lot of red tape to go through. They close the door, but they've also sealed it shut, self-sabotaging, unpredictable, isolated. They might even, it might seem like a back and forth with them too. So let's actually go into some of the behaviors and descriptions of what they've come up with here to kind of give you some clarity. So secure attachment is like comfortable with intimacy. All these words are comfortable. Okay, what is comfortable? What is intimacy to you? So there's a lot of description that needs to be made here, but regulating emotions and feelings, I think that's like so key. Even knowing that you're having an emotion and feeling is important, and then knowing how to have good coping and problem solving. Like, how do you self-soothe? Trusting and empathetic and compassionate. And all of this could be related to yourself. Like, I'm trusting of myself. I'm empathetic of my own feelings. I'm compassionate with myself. I'm comfortable being close and alone. Communicates effectively. That's also like a big 2 words that mean a lot of things, but we'll go into this in the Manifesting Magic Manual, because this is like the base, right, of the second step. The codependency is the base, because I think a lot of us don't even realize how we play a role in making this world go around, right? And making our lives work, feel good or not, feel secure and strong or not. So communicates effectively and sets healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries. Very, again, lots of charge words. So number 2, dismissive and avoidant. So this is actually on this scale, it's on number 3. So apologize for the switcheroo there, but less emotionally invested in the present. Interesting. Very telling. So, non-committal responses, less emotionally invested in the present. I just have to say that again because I think that's so important. And I hope I come back to that later because in the confidence toolkit, there's a place about being present with your emotions and that without that you really don't have true confidence. And if you're not honest and vulnerable, and it seems contradictory to confidence because so many people think or see a form of confidence that's actually arrogance as confidence, but the reality is that they're not actually in their bodies. And so, and that means you have to be present to be in your body. And if you're present in your body, you're actually feeling what's happening. And there may be a lot happening there that a lot of us don't want to feel or recognize because it's so vulnerable. and and so as a secure person, you have to regulate your emotions and feelings. But in order to do that, I apologize. In order to do that, you have to know what they are. And in order to do that, you have to be present with them. You have to sit in uncomfortable feelings. And so that is interesting because dismissive and avoidant is saying, less emotionally invested in the present. Because in order to be invested, you have to be present. And when you're present, you will inevitably feel your emotions. You will be blatantly aware of your emotions. So non-committal responses, like, oh, I don't know. Or they can, this might be more, I don't know, or, oh, I can't commit because sabotage momentum toward closeness. You might totally recognize this in yourself. Um, there might be something that just feels really uncomfortable to do for one reason or another, but it might also be a behavior that is really hard to see in yourself because it's something that you've just been doing so often and it has served you for one reason or another, right? So communicates wanting freedom. So that can kind of actually be a sign a little bit when you're feeling like you're being kept by someone or people, and you're being non-committal, not in, not responsive to others, kind of like avoidant of questions, of desires of others, and you're thinking to yourself, God, I just want to be free of that, then most likely you're behaving in this way. And there's a reason. It doesn't mean bad or good. I don't want you to put yourself in that place at all. It's really, there might be something happening that you're responding as a trigger. It might be your normal way of being for sure. It might just be a behavior that you do a lot, but or what you come with, but it might also be a screen that you're seeing the world with. There's so many factors here, right? So embody the motto, I'm all I've got. So you might feel like you're really all you got. And so you kind of have to be a little bit like, hang on. Suspiciousness and difficulty in trusting others. Mixed messages by alternating between bids for closeness and wanting distance. So there might be a little bit of back and forth there for you because you still want, everybody wants to feel a part of something, but there's a place where that may be very, very scary for the dismissive and avoidant person or action, behavior, attachment style. Okay, so number 3, preoccupied, anxious. And they tend to look and act more codependent. Intense emotional discomfort or avoidance of being alone. difficulty in setting boundaries, fear of abandonment, frequently needing validation, an intense desire for intimacy and closeness. So you might notice like these are kind of complete opposites. You have the avoidant who like is turning their head away and may be sparked by an anxious attachment style. And so they may actually gravitate toward each other as magnets. And you might find that you're one of these during a certain time with certain people in certain situations. I invite you to like kind of figure that out because most likely you're not feeling really good when you're doing these things, and it's not helping you be your most authentic self. If anything, you're probably hiding a lot of that or giving it away in a certain way. Like dismissive tends to feel like, or avoidant tends to feel like they're on their own. They need to make this happen. They may seem a little bit like the fixer in the codependent arena. They might want to fix the anxious attachment style person or help them in a way that is not fitting or healthy for either one of them. And the anxious may, have the fear of abandonment when the avoidant turns around because there's too much feeling happening. So I think the anxious and the codependent tend to have almost the overemphasis of feeling. They tend to be it's still very similar in that they might not be able to regulate their emotions in a certain way for themselves, and they may need to go toward in order to have they're using the outside to help themselves with their emotions, kind of just like the avoidant. While the avoidant's trying to refrain maybe from people, they're still using the outside to help them with the emotion by pushing away instead of bringing toward them. Fear of abandonment, frequently needing validation, an intense desire for intimacy and closeness, tendency to feel or act jealous, difficulty trusting others. So there's still this trust issue, right? There's still a huge amount of trust. And if you see my confidence toolkit, the first step of coming out process, you will see that confidence is all about trusting yourself. So in the end, really, I think the big part is working on that trust. What does that even look like? What does trust in self look like? And then once you know what that looks like, then you can really start to understand what it looks like toward others or with others. Okay, so then there's number 4, fearful or disorganized, difficulty opening up to others. Keep conversations on the surface level. It's funny because the fearful disorganized might actually look very social. They may actually be the most like gregarious of the party because they may be able to actually keep conversation. They may be masking that fear with the surface level connection, but they're not truly opening up. You might notice some people like that. That's a possibility. It might be really hard, and that maybe is why disorganized is a part of this. Might be really hard to decipher at first who these people are or how, or even in you may be like, I love people, or I'm like, the life of the party. Cut people off quickly if they do something that hurts you. You might not even get, like if you are this or you're finding yourself do this, you might not even get people close enough to you to even cut them off, disassociate from your emotions. That's also a big, how do you disassociate from your own emotions? It's like when something arises, it's like you shut down, maybe. We should look that up, but longing for a deep relationship, but don't think you'll find one. So it's like this contradiction. While in the dismissive avoidant, it's, you know, you don't really see this longing. They might not really admit all of that. They probably have relationships, really close ones, but then they do this turn away when the emotion, maybe when the emotions get too, when it gets a little too heated, because they're not able to regulate themselves or even stay present with it. Um, Longing for deep relationships, but don't think they'll find one. So there's a little bit of a closed door, right? If they don't think they can find a close relationship, they may have already kind of closed the door to that in their minds and in their actions. Withdraw when emotions arise. So they're like, I mean, I think this is very similar to avoidant, but I think avoidant is not as like cutthroat. And you'll notice with the image of this, you have the door totally blocked and her, like all the senses kind of just like, no, I don't even want to be a part of this. Um, while the dismissive avoidant is just kind of like, I'm fine. It's almost like they're just in it and not like, I have no feeling. I'm good. I'm always good. I'm great alone. And and it also can pull the anxious person toward them because they seem all amazing. They seem secure. Withdraw when emotions arise and hard time self-soothing. So I think actually all three have a hard time self-soothing in some way, shape, or form, because the reality is um, that they're using other tactics to self-soothe, right? So like dismissive and avoidant is self-soothing by telling themselves, I'm all I've got, in a way that is not taking in account that their emotions are important and that other people in their life are needed, and that they have to have these hard conversations. They have to deal with what's happening internally, that they're not always okay, and that's okay. Like the true awareness of like, oh, it's not really good and I need to have my feelings, and that's self-soothing. Having my feelings is self-soothing. um, while the anxious may be using others to kind of help them not deal with what's happening inside. They may be, you know, reaching out when they really could just sit with that uncomfortability and be like, okay, I have to take a no, or I have to, and I have to take care of myself. What does that look like on my own? It's like they're not really able to take care of themselves, whatever that means. Um, and instead expecting others to kind of do that for them. The fearful and disorganized is really a combination of the two in a lot of ways, but at the same time, they're kind of closed the door completely, where it's like, I am so sensitive. I am, I can't have this. I can't have this. There's a lot of rules usually in their way of having the kind of relationship or love that they say they so crave. So it's very contradictory. Um, okay, so that being said, we talked about, it's been 30 minutes, and we talked about each of the 4 attachment styles. And I want you to think about yourself or your own personal situations and how they land within these attachment styles. Um, And we're going to actually give you some resources to kind of read. So we got Securely Attached, and this is by Ellie Harwood. This is really kind of very deep into, workbook kind of into all of the attachment. So I'm going to go into one page of this book, and it is attachment categories. So I'm going to get you off of the sharing. And so I'm going to show you attachment categories. And I'm going to read them to you. So we already kind of talked about these, right? In my book, but these are just extras that you can read. And secure attachment. So secure, and that's as a child name, an adult name secure or autonomous, which is interesting because the second really in my discovery of polyamory for myself and coming out finally, autonomy was what helped me get here. 7 years ago I came out, but it was 12 years, almost 12 years ago, that I started my own business. And that propelled me to start getting into my body, funny enough. The less, because I'm more of an anxious attachment style, and so this might not apply to you. Since I'm a more anxious attachment style, when I worked with others, it was too close for me because I was continuously getting triggered in certain ways. And some of my triggers are money and worthiness with work. And so I found that I needed to separate myself and get an independent working environment. And once I did that, it took about 2 years, but once I did that, I got back into my body. I started losing weight, started taking care of myself, and started dancing again. And I had been dancing all of my life and had stopped for probably about 5 years, and then went back finally after starting my own business. And I tell you this because autonomy is a huge, like finding your agency is a huge part of feeling secure. And how do you do that though? Because as an anxious person, yes, I told you my story as how I did that. As a person who is dismissive or avoidant, they may need something else. It may actually be more that you need team play. You might need more connection with people in a certain way. These are things you might not know. What are you actually? It's funny because I'm going to use the word that you may go to, like avoidant. What are you avoiding? Like, what are you avoiding that you love doing? Like, and I say avoiding, but I think it's more that you're avoiding others, but you're also avoiding yourself. There's somewhere that you're avoiding what your true inner spirit is calling your love. There's something that you're avoiding. And for me, of course, I said I was preoccupied. I was preoccupied with others while avoiding people are different, right? They're avoiding, they're like the opposite. They're turning their face away. While I was looking too much toward others, I needed to have an environment that turned me toward myself more in a certain, and it might just be one area in your life. So dismissive and avoidant might need to be able to turn toward others in a way that feels uncomfortable, but is for a reason that you love doing. Like it might be a person who needs to organize, people together, and they serve a purpose, a higher purpose that makes them turn toward and be needed by others in a certain way that feels good, right? So whether it be another player on a team, it might be an actual organizer of something. I say this because I have a partner who literally is doing this, and I see them in this, or maybe having a little bit more of the dismissive avoidant style in their like go-to habits. And right now, they're doing things in their life where they're organizing, they're being a team member, they're doing areas that they love. You know, maybe it's a sport they love, or a craft they, a hobby they love, whatever it is. But it's got to be something that is worth doing for and with others, because otherwise it's like, why am I doing this? um, there's got to be something that's for you, like you're turning toward yourself by turning toward others, right? So, preoccupied. Okay, so that's preoccupied. Now, the fearful disorganized, that's, I'm curious as to what you all come up with when it comes to this, because I think there's a lot of blocks. I think it's a lot of self-talk too that might be happening, around what's possible, um, around disassociating from emotions. I think that is probably part of the key of realizing, like, it's not others, it's you. So once you start realizing, oh, what I'm saying about others is actually what I need to work on. Um, that's a really hard one, because it ends up, it's about facing your ego, and realizing that you're never going to be happy unless you really realize that we all are suffering, and no one's the bad guy. And even if you're the person, like if you switch that role and say you're talking about others and you're like cutting people off, because they did X, Y, and Z. And if you face the mirror back and say, oh my God, that might be me, you're not a bad guy. So like the self talk is probably that you do think you're kind of the bad guy in some way. So I'm just curious as to what, because I feel like there is an activity that might need to happen. And all I up with is self talk and being very present with the emotions, working on that, and maybe faking it until you make it. But I'm not a therapist, I'm not an expert. I'm just working on what I know about people and what I've learned, throughout my life lately. So I do want to go back into this book. Sorry, I went all over the place, but here we go. So, infant attachment characteristics. Okay, so they cry when in distress. This is secure. Seeks a proximity to caregivers when distressed. So, if you realize, it's like, yeah, you're going to have feelings. You're going to want to be close. Maintains proximity to caregivers, so they try to get closer, and is easily reassured and calmed. So they're easily reassured because they trust. They trust in their space and their caregiver, and maybe have been shown through time that trust, like, helped them to trust. Loving and okay, so this is the adult. Loving and supportive when others are emotional. So knowing how to deal with others and their emotions is huge, because it also tells you that they know how to deal with their own emotions. And it might be particular emotions. Okay. So just watch that. If someone like is having a really hard time, or you're having really hard time with someone crying, or someone being upset, or someone, you know, like whatever the emotion is, just think to yourself, okay, if I'm having a hard time, that means I'm probably having a really hard time with my own. And how is that? When do I have that? Do I even allow myself to know that I am having anger or sadness or whatever? Seek support when upset. So seek support. Wow. So the avoidant probably won't do that, you know. Um, and communicates needs verbally and directly. And I would say that the fearful, not fearful, um, the anxious might not be very clear about their needs. They may be focusing so much on other people that they barely think about their own needs. Easily soothed through empathy. So, you hear easily, and it's usually because they trust. They like take the experience as true instead of believing it's not true because of past. And this is about being in the present too. So that's interesting. And also really knowing what empathy feels like. Like, what does that even look like? Um, some of us don't really know what that means. Primary coping, connection, and nervous system inclinations, regulated pattern, reach, and relief. So that's interesting. So it's like your pattern of reach and relief instead of, so the insecure would be reach, reject, and repeat. So that's what they feel like. They're reaching, they get rejected, and they reach again and they get rejected, and they reach again. Like the more they get rejected, the more they reach forward. Hyper arousal. That's hyper arousal. And the insecure dismissive is hypo arousal, avoid and retreat. So they don't even reach, they just avoid and retreat. So this is interesting. The insecure disorganized attachment has a lot of different responses. They have what is it? The I always forget what that is. Your parasympathetic nerve, where it's like you respond. There's fight, flight, and freeze, battle, flee, or disassociate. And freeze, okay, so that gives you an idea of what disassociate looks like. It's freeze. So when you freeze, it's kind of like, I don't know what to do because I'm like stuck. Fight, flight, or freeze. So that's their response. That's their nervous. So fight is like, can't believe you're not going to do this. I'm going to, make you do it. Flight is like, okay, whatever. See it. Freeze is like, and there's also fawn, which I think fawn is probably more of a anxious, ambivalent, anxious, preoccupied characteristic in that they're pleasing. They're trying to please. While I'm not quite sure fearful attachment really has that response, because they just say reach and reject, reach and reject, reach and reject. That sounds a little bit like fawning. Okay, so I wanted to go through this, but there's also the infant attachment characteristics and the adult relationship tendencies of the others. So let's just read those. Cries, this is insecure, cries or anxious, cries when in distress, actively seeks proximity to caregivers, protest upon reunion, does not maintain contact. That's interesting, right? Protest upon reunion, does not maintain contact, does not soothe easily. So it's funny because it's reach and reject. So they're the ones that actually may be slightly rejecting once they reach out, and says protest upon reunion does not maintain. So they're like pissed. They're like, how come you left? Like, I needed you. That's their way of like, adult, hyper vigilant about others' feelings. Like they're really paying attention. Like, what does that mean? Needs frequent reassurance, communicates needs dramatically. So they communicate needs dramatically. And it's funny because I just said that I think sometimes anxious characteristics might not be clear in their needs, but I think it's because they're not actually, they may be communicating them, but they may not be doing the things they need to do, like when their boundaries are not, when their boundaries are kind of crossed. They may not even know where that, I don't think they may not know the difference between the other person and themselves. Like there's a little bit of, well, there's a huge enmeshment going on. Um, that's my perception of it. Does not feel easily reassured or soothed. So that it's all about trust, right? So, and then the dismissive attachment, insecure dismissive attachment is does not outwardly express distress. So this is the infant. Does not seek caregiver upon reunion. So they're just like, I'm fine without you. Does not maintain closeness to caregiver. Looks calm outwardly, but has high cortisol. So this is interesting because this goes into even like the people who might not bring you close. They may actually want even more. You know, they're like, they actually are very sensitive, even though we don't say they're sensitive. They may actually be more sensitive in a certain way. They might not, like I said, for me, being more of the insecure, I needed to not turn away, but I needed to turn inward. I needed to separate myself from the work environment as a joint venture and go it on my own so that I could figure out what was me. That was the cut of enmeshment. While I think the avoidant, um, you know, what I was thinking is that they they may really need that connection, but it's so scary because they've seen so many times the other person or people not really being there for them in the way they need. And so they're just like, I'm done, you know? So being able to turn around toward and really be clear and they have to do that first for themselves. First off, they have to know what that even feels like. And that might be really scary. And so that's why I was like, you have to know what you really love doing too, in order to use it to turn toward people. Right. So having a team, being, you know, organizer, that's a way, but it has to be something that you really love and you've already like acknowledged that for yourself, really turn toward yourself, looks calm outwardly, but has high cortisol. So as an adult, they're uncomfortable in the presence of emotions. Um, yeah, pretty much that says it all. And seeks distraction when upset. So that could be many things, right? It could be food, it could be a form of addiction, you know, um, might be over exercising, it could be a whole bunch of things. Um, does not communicate emotional needs to others. So you won't hear, this is also a big red flag, if you say an emotion and someone turns away from you, or if you notice that they never use an emotion, they never, or you ask them and they deflect and talk about like the other things. They're not able to like even give an emotion, or they might not, to be honest with you, they probably don't even know what is happening with them. Like they don't have the experience of communicating about their emotions. Does not communicate emotional needs to others, which is funny because I always think the reverse of these people, of people who are gravitate to this, because I always think that they know what their needs are, you know, that they're like really like, I'm self-sufficient, so I must, you know. But the reality is if you don't know what's happening with you on an emotional level, you're not really able to be direct about what you need. Um, and directness is actually the key word. If you're not really being honest with yourself, then you can't be honest with others. And it's almost the opposite. While with the insecure, preoccupied attachment, the anxious one, it's almost that it's like they're doing the reverse. They're so centered on others but in a lot of ways, they're very self-centered. It's like it's I really feel like both of these are very similar to each other. Um, and that's why they are magnets for each other, because I think they teach each other really good lessons of how to be, not what you're doing um, for yourself. The things that we are attracted to tend to be lessons for us. So does not communicate emotions needs to others, emotional needs. That's a big part of it. Emotional needs. Finds empathy and nurture on finds empathy and nurture uncomfortable. It's funny. Like, I'm questioning, do they find people being empathizing with them uncomfortable? Or they don't know how to really be empathizing with others. I had a question from someone like, what is empathy? And we should really actually look that up right now. I have about 10 minutes at most. We should just look up empathy because I think that's really I'm just gonna just Google it, right? Sorry, people. That's what I'm gonna do. So let's try to see if we can. Here it is. Share. Okay, so that's not the one I wanted to share, but here. Stop sharing that one. And let's share just the page itself. Okay. So we're just going to share empathy. Okay, so the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Share the feelings. Okay. He has a total lack of empathy for anyone. Okay, that's just not really that clear. And the question is, what's the difference between empathy and sympathy? For me, it's a big difference. Sympathy for me, when I experience sympathy from someone, it's a distance. There's like, I'm not in it with you. Oh, too bad for you. And then the empathy is like, I don't exactly understand, but I'm feeling what you're feeling. Let me reiterate what I'm hearing. Is that true? It's like really like, I'm here with you. And I may be feeling it, but I don't have to. It's not exactly that, but I can place it in my body. I can kind of understand where you're at. And it's like I'm trying to understand. I don't know if empathy is really like, can you really understand someone else's stuff? You might be able to understand the feeling, but maybe not really what's happening. Being aware of, being sensitive to, experiencing the feelings or thoughts. And so, yeah, it's dangerous to do that, right? If you personally feel uncomfortable with feelings, if you just have a hard time with feelings in general. So it's going to be really hard for someone to do that if they're having a hard time with feelings. So I want to unshare that for a moment and get back. You see my kitty. Okay, so I just want to share that securely attached with Ellie Harwood, NALPC. Another really good book is Attached, and that was the one I quoted above. So let me share. So Ellie, so Dr. Amir, Levine, and Rachel Heller is the are the writers of this book, Attached. It's actually funny enough, I was my first year coming out as polyamorous. I wasn't dating someone, but I was talking to somebody when I didn't trust. And I was so pissed when someone said I didn't, but I realized I didn't trust. I wasn't trusting in myself. I wasn't trusting. And they suggested this book, and I thank them for it. I needed to stop talking to them though, because they were the extreme of a trigger for me, and no wonder I was attracted to them. And the new science of adult attachment and how it can help you find and keep love. I don't know about keep, but I think you can keep love. It doesn't have to be in one person. Right? So that's my perspective on that. Really good book. It's just kind of hones it down. You can kind of make sense of your own attachment style with the test in here, which is page 52 of my book. So then I wanted to share with you one other resource, actually two other resources, maybe three, quickly in 5 minutes. I'll share this with you. So the third resource is Jessica Fern. None of these people are giving me anything. I'm sharing these resources with you because attachment theory is so important. And there are a few people out there who have really made it more clear in relationship to coming out or polyamory. And one of them is Jessica Fern. She has a book called Polysecure. And I think it is really interesting. I actually donated it to a friend, and so they're reading it right now. Hopefully it's helpful to them. And there's a workbook. There's also Polywise, and I've been listening to that. I think I read it when it came out before, but now I'm listening to it again on audio, and it's really good, really interesting. She writes it in her voice, but also with her, I think it's her husband, David Cooley. So it's a good, interesting perspective with this other, I think he's more of like he's like a scientist. I can't remember. David Cooley shares the insights they have gained through thousands of hours of working with clients in consensually non-monogamous relationships using the grounded theory approach. This is different kind of way of research, and they explore the underlying challenges that non-monogamous individuals and partners can experience after their first steps, offering practical strategies for blah, blah, blah. So it's really, both books are great. And then there's a workbook. So, and the fourth, thank you to my Polyamorous group and someone offering this video for me to watch because it was really helpful. So I suggest it now to you all. And it is How Attachment Influenced Self-Image, Judy Ho and TEDxReno. And you can just find it on YouTube. I'll put this link actually in the Facebook chat description area, just so that you have it, and all of these other references. Thank you so much for joining me today, talking about attachment theory. Sorry for all the blah, 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 but I think it's so important. It is a part of, it doesn't seem like it should be a part of what I call the coming out process, but it is, because you're not going to, if you don't know yourself, how can you come out? It might seem like it's just this little thing. Oh, I'm polyamorous. Yeah, but no, it's way more than that. I'm sorry to tell you. And actually, Polywise, some part of her book on what does polyamory, but also coming out is like, can be for people. This is what I'm talking about. So please check that out, because I was like, yes, Jessica, thank you for saying this. And if you have any idea what I'm talking about, feel free to message me, or if you have any questions, go to raylifecoaching.com. You can email me at Ray, R-E-Y, at Renee, RENEEBEYOR.com, or just go to Facebook and you can message me there. Thank you so much for attending. Please share, like me on Facebook, Instagram, or check out my free items on my website at reylifecoaching.com/free-resources, or go to the more tab and you'll find free resources there. Thank you, and see you next time when I have a live chat about something. Okay, I'm going to unshare, and there we go. Have a great day. Bye.